Hello, hello. Dr. Michelle Tubman here, back with another episode of What the Science Says. And today we're looking at a paper about stress, and not just stress in general, but stress as a badge of honor. And I think it's super important that we talk about this because I think this idea of stress as a badge of honor is actually highly prevalent in our society and doing a lot of harm in terms of contributing to burnout and poor health overall. And I have a feeling that this might be changing with newer generations, but certainly when I look at my generation and generations older than me, there's absolutely this attitude that the more we work and the more stress we have, the more impressive we must be as human beings. And I think having to live up to that has been hard on so many of my peers. And I know I certainly fell into this trap for many, many years, and oftentimes even feeling guilty if I was in a stage of my life where I wasn't experiencing a whackload of stress. So much so that if I felt good, if I felt nice and relaxed or balanced, I would go out looking for something to bring more stress into my life. And I have a feeling that a lot of us are caught in this cycle. And that's partly because, if you're watching movies or TV or, listening to who the news chooses to talk about in terms of who's impressive, who's accomplishing things, it's always people who seem to be doing so much and working long hours and, pouring their whole life into work. And there's certainly been a move towards talking about work-life balance in recent years. And I love it. I think it's a super important conversation to have. It's just, what does it actually mean? What does work-life balance actually mean? And that's why I think talking about this stress as a badge of honor conversation is so important, because I think this idea of society valuing those of us who work harder, work longer, have more stress, makes it a little bit difficult for actually many of us to step back and ask ourselves what life would look like without that filter on everything that we do. And so the study that we're looking at today was published in October 2022 in Work and Stress Journal by Doctors Black and Britt. And the title of their paper is Stress as a Badge of Honor: Relationships with Performance, Health, and Well-Being. And here's what this study did. The study took how many people? 752 Amazon workers. About half of them were male, half were female. Average age was about 35. And they had them fill out a whole bunch of surveys. So some of the surveys were on attitudes around stress and this idea of stress as a badge of honor mindset, and then a series of surveys on health and well-being. And they looked at what the relationship was between these surveys. And they were particularly interested in 4 different components of stress as a badge of honor mindset. So first of all, what even is stress as a badge of honor? So the researchers identify this as the belief that a high workload is impressive and both personally and socially valued. And so it's essentially that people who have this mindset equate working really long hours with being a good human. Of course, I feel that's crap. So I might be looking at this study with biased eyes. But anyways, I'm excited about what this study showed. And so again, when they looked at stress as a badge of honor, they felt that there were 4 components that contributed to this mindset. The first component is relaxation remorse. So this is this idea of feeling some discomfort or maybe even feeling guilty in the absence of stress. So if you choose to take a little time off work or decide to sleep in one morning, or God forbid, plan a vacation for yourself and then feel guilty about it, or at least feel uncomfortable of having some downtime, that's relaxation remorse, and that's the first component. The second component is stress as achievement, and this is viewing your own high workload or your high stress levels as being important. The third is comparison, social comparison. So this is looking at what others are doing around you and then emulating them to have so that you're doing the same. So let's just say, for example, you see that Joe comes into the office an hour early every day, then you want to be like Joe, and so you come into the office an hour early every day too. That is the social comparison piece. And then the fourth piece is what they call impression management. And this is when you try to create a social image of yourself as being the hard worker. And so this is really humble bragging, right? This is making those posts on social media that are humble bragging. And that's the fourth piece. So what did all of these surveys show? Well, here's where I find that things are very fascinating. So the first thing that they showed is that people who ranked high for believing stress is achievement actually reported having less perceived stress than anyone else and actually had overall better health in terms of the physical, the emotional, and the social parameters that the researchers looked at. Now, the opposite was true for people who had scored high on the relaxation remorse piece. So people who have relaxation remorse actually reported the highest levels of stress and also the worst outcomes in terms of their social, emotional, and physical health. And in terms of the stress-related impression management and the social comparison piece, that seemed to be less important than how you scored on stress as achievement and the relaxation remorse piece. And I feel like this is such an important thing to note because it really shows us that we can choose to think differently about stress and have that really affect our overall health and well-being. And there's nothing more powerful than knowing you have the control in a situation like this. And so these results actually remind me of Kelly McGonigal's book. She wrote a book about stress. I can't remember, the title off the top of my head, but the thesis of the book was really in encouraging readers to stop looking at stress as a negative thing and looking at it as a positive thing as well. And she cited lots of different studies where they've shown how important the physiology behind how we're viewing stress is. So, for example, when we are feeling stressed and I would identify that as that mental anguish that you feel and that tension that you feel in your body. Those feelings are resulting from a certain biochemical cocktail. So some hormones and some neurotransmitters that are floating around in your body causing you to feel this way. If you look at people who are feeling excited about something, that chemical cocktail is very much similar. In fact, it is the same combination of hormones and neurotransmitters, just slightly different ratios of them. And it totally changes how we experience whatever's going on, right? So if we're viewing something as stress or something that we can't handle, we go into that fight or flight response with one ratio of biochemicals, and we have that awful feeling that we identify as stress. But if we're viewing that same circumstance as excitement or something positive, we have that different ratio of biochemical compounds in our body that actually make us feel energized, motivated to move, intrigued, and ready to go, which is a so much more positive feeling than the stress piece of it. And we can do that by simply looking at stress as being something positive for ourselves and trying to work on having less relaxation remorse. And I'll tell you, with my weight loss clients, I hear relaxation remorse all the time because I commonly will hear, well, I don't have any time for myself because I've got to go to work. I got to take care of the kids. My husband doesn't help me, right? All of these excuses for why people can't take a little bit of time to take care of themselves and unplug for a minute, right? And so working on reducing that relaxation remorse and switching how we view stress, I think can go such a long way in how we actually feel. And so when I read this study, what was the key takeaway for me? I think there's two. I think the first one is some people actually thrive in the face of stress. And I see this all the time, right? Like I see people who just get a little bit excited with a deadline or, something external that's just going to push them a little bit. Like I see people absolutely thrive in situations like that. And other people, when faced with similar, situations, kind of just shut right down. And why is that? And so really what stress is when the stressors in our life stack too high and we can no longer recover from them. So I think we need to, generally speaking, as a society, start looking at stress as a little bit differently, right? Because I think if you Google stress or, stress reduction, you're going to find all sorts of opinions about how we all just have too much stress and we have to work on reducing the amount of stress that we have in our life. And I actually think that is a broken strategy because I don't think it's even possible to have a stress-free life. Things are always going to happen. Life is always going to throw wrenches in your plan. There's always going to be things that are going to poke at you and cause you a little bit of discomfort, right? This is just the nature of life. And so I think having a goal to reduce the stressors in our life just makes us feel badly because we can't actually do it. And this is why I like looking at stress as being more of a balance. So, you hear the phrase fill your bucket. I think that's such a brilliant metaphor for stress and balancing work-life balance. That wasn't great English, but you know what I mean. But I think looking at the bucket model is super helpful. So if you look at the things that we use to fill our bucket, these are things that allow us to recover from the stressors that occur in our life. And so these are things like eating well, getting good sleep, getting good movement that makes your body feel good, spending time with people who you love and who make you feel good about yourself, participating in activities that fill your cup, right? That you enjoy, that make you feel good. Spending time in nature, maybe having a mindfulness or a meditation practice. Whatever the things are for you that fill your bucket, that's what we need to be focusing on. Because if we look at stress as the things that poke holes in the bucket and let all of that good stuff flow out, yeah, we can work on patching the holes. Like we can make some progress in reducing the number of stressors in our life, but it's not always easy. And sometimes these stressors are outside of our sphere of control. But what's always within our control is what we're doing to fill the bucket. So I think, yeah, we can spend a little bit of time patching the holes, but I think we should be spending more of our time filling the bucket with all of those things that give us some recovery. And what I love about this model is that if you are somebody who thrives on stress, you can still have it and you can avoid burnout by balancing what you're putting into your bucket versus how many holes that you're poking into it. And that's why I love this model, because it allows the flexibility to flow with what life is going to bring up for you. So that's what I would love to encourage you to do is, right now, go get a pad of paper, write down all of the things that you can do to fill your bucket. And then I would also make a list of the things that are currently poking holes in that bucket for you and looking at how things are balancing out, right? And what I think the irony of all of this is that when the stress starts to be more than our ability to recover from it, this is when it becomes so much more difficult for us to actually fill the bucket, because we start to feel depleted rather quickly and like we don't have the time or energy to do those things. And the irony is this is when we need to do them even more. So if we can work on having a higher level of recovery in our life at baseline when things are doing good, then I think we have some more reservoirs to lean on when life throws more stressors in our way. So if we can build a habit of recovery, if we can build a habit of filling our bucket daily with things that are going to build our resilience against stress, then we're going to do better in the long run. And I think that for me, that's what the takeaway of this study really is. So if you look in the notes below, you will see the link to the study if you're interested in reading more. And if not, thank you for being here, and we'll see you soon.